Welcome to Seminar 1, Culinary Tradition as a Springboard to Creativity on the Menu. And thank you to Kikkoman Sales USA for sponsoring this session. We appreciate their continued support. So today we're going to have two really talented chefs. We have Chef Mutsuko Soma, who's the chef owner of Kamonegi in Seattle. She is a soba master, a shochu advisor, a sake sommelier, and also wildly creative. And if you get a chance, there's a podcast with her talking about creativity, and she just has a lot of really great ideas. So she's going to go up first, and then Chef Tod Kawachi, who is the executive chef of Joseph Phelps Vineyards here in Napa, is going to follow. And I will just say that Chef Kawachi also spent, I think, 8 years at the Culinary Institute of America, and before going to Saint Superi, is that correct? And so he has both a great experience from working here at the CIA, but then also creating really fantastic fine dining menus that pair with wines. So this is going to be a great session. Thanks again to Kikkoman Sales USA for sponsoring it. So I'm going to let Chef Soma kick it off.
Can I start? Hi, everyone. So first, I'm gonna make dashi, like super classic Japanese dashi. I know like nowadays, like French people use dashi, Italian chef use dashi, but this is traditional Japanese dashi. I have a kombu kelp and dry shiitake mushroom. Dry shiitake mushroom has more umami than like regular shiitake mushroom. It's packed of umami. I soak this in water, cold water, 30 minutes before. You can do overnight too. So I'm gonna pour in here. Thank you. And starting fire. I'll do like low heat. I wanna like slowly bringing up because umami comes out, not boiling point from kombu. So you wanna slowly bringing up this. And later, I'm adding bonito, like katsuobushi. Are you familiar with katsuobushi? I'm so lazy, so I put in like tea bag, so I don't have to strain, right? Yeah. So meanwhile, I'm gonna make kaeshi, which blend of kikkoman soy sauce, kikkoman kotteri mirin, sugar, and brown sugar. So just mix everything. Thank you. Just boil. You don't have to like cook long time or anything. Just make sure all the alcohol like disappear from mirin. So dashi has like no sodium, right? And this called kaeshi has sodium. So after both are made, I usually keep these two separate, then blend together for my soba restaurant. So I have 3 types of like broth. One is hot noodle in hot broth. One is cold dipping sauce, like zaru soba. Other one is hot dipping sauce with cold noodle. So all the ratio is different. And this is like super versatile recipe, but 10 part of dashi, 1 part of kaeshi makes hot broth. 10 part of dashi, 2 part of broth makes hot dipping sauce. Then 10 part of dashi and 3 part of this makes cold dipping sauce. So best way to taste dashi is either using noodle or tofu. So today I'm using tofu for tasting this dashi, and I'm using cold version. So 10 part of dashi and 3 part of this kaeshi. Any question? It's a little bit confusing, but this kaishi is amazing. After this boil, let it cool down. You can keep in room temperature. If you got a little bit sugar, you can use like yakitori sauce or like teriyaki sauce. And like, I love using kikkoman soy sauce and mirin, like super like umami, and it's amazing. Meanwhile, I'm gonna make tempura crunch. Can I mix over there? Okay, okay. Thank you. I like using cold water so gluten doesn't develop. Do you want thickness of a little bit lighter than pancake mix? Like this thickness. On the turn of this, so kaishi is ready. Dashi is still simmering. Okay.
Chef Soma,
Yes.
what are you doing there?
Oh, sorry. I'm making like tempura crunch. Usually, this is like byproduct of like when you're making like tempura. Like if you like tempura shrimp or vegetables, you get like small bits like this, and we save. Okay. You can use for like so many stuff. It's crunchy, fatty. It's like a bacon for Japanese people. Huh? Duck. So if you're making tempura at home, don't throw away this crunch. Put on paper towels. So that's it. Thank you. So now dashi water is boiling. I don't want to boil kombu because we are not making kombu juice, just we are using umami from kombu. So I will take out kombu from here. You can keep shiitake in here. Thank you. And I'm putting bonito flake. Let it simmer for, I usually simmer around 15 minutes. This is a coarse grind. If you're using like small bonito, you can do like 5 minutes, then strain. Can I put back? Okay.
I've never seen those in the bag before.
No?
Great idea.
Like?
I've never seen it in the bag before. That's a great idea.
For
Yeah,
your house, like you can get like small tea bag
Very
things.
easy.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chef Kawachi was saying he's not seen it in the bag before, and I haven't either. And I think that's just a really like, you know, what a great way, because sometimes you're trying to scoop that all up. And so this is just makes it very neat. And so Chef Soma, while we're waiting for that to happen, I was wondering if you could talk about, in terms of this year's Worlds of Flavor, Authenticity, Flavor, and the Future, in some ways you're just the perfect chef to be here with us, so thank you. But you studied, you took an intensive soba making course in Japan, where you learned everything from its history to the buckwheat milling process. And as I mentioned, you've learned about shochu and also sake. And so you're steeped in these traditions, these Japanese traditions. But then you also are wildly creative and inventive, and so I wondered if you could talk about that process, like where does tradition come in for you, and then also like the experimental part of your practice, like, you know, because I had, and maybe it was in this podcast I listened to, but or somewhere online talking about that you do something like 50 new recipes a month or something to come up with a new menu at Komunegi. Is that true?
Yes. I like creating new stuff. But for me, traditional part is super important because that's going to be a backbone of your creation. Like making dashi, it's same way to hold origami. Like have to be lightweight to hold. Otherwise, won't be a crane, you know, like origami crane. So my dashi making process or soba making process, super traditional. Then I can have fun with like, you know, adding tempura flake or like fun topping.
That's great. And so what's happening up there now?
Okay, so this is simmering, it's boiling, right? And kaeshi is done. So I made this yesterday. Dashi, strain and chilled. And kaeshi. So 10 part of dashi, 3 part of kaeshi. I'm gonna mix 2. 10 and 3. So this will be cold dipping sauce. Like if you are using dipping cold noodle, like zaru soba, this is a broth. So today I'm using tofu and tempura crunch and a little bit wasabi, green onion, cucumber to make like refreshing appetizer.
And then this is a dish I believe is going to be served at the marketplace today, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
It's so good. My favorite.
I mean, your whole menu looks like that. It's just everything is so inventive, but also just really your cooking. It makes you. She has a great Instagram account, you know, and it makes you really want to eat your food.
Yeah, please follow me my Instagram. Okay, can I play now?
Yes.
Am I too fast? It's okay.
It's okay. I still have questions.
Okay.
And I was going to say too, you know, we weren't officially doing Slido for this, but if anybody in the audience has a question, type it into Slido and I can ask on your behalf.
Asian people cut tofu on their hand. Put on plate. Pour dashi. A little bit cucumber. I salted and massaged a little bit so dashi doesn't dilute. And tempura flake. Tempura flake is amazing when it's crunch, but also amazing soggy too. Because like fattiness comes out.
And is it used more for texture or flavor or both?
Both. So you enjoy a little bit soggy part, and also you enjoy crispy part. They're both good. And green onion. And wasabi. That's it.
Well, so so I have some questions for you. We have
Yes.
some time. So first of all, apologies if this is a beginner's question about tofu. I had always been taught that you should weight it in between paper towels. And then I had read recently that that's actually not something that you should do. Are you doing anything of that when you get tofu?
It depends on recipe. If I have to cook for miso soup, like I don't care the liquid. But if you're making like marble tofu or something, I put the weight and drain the liquid out.
Okay.
So this case, just casually drain a little bit, but it's not much.
And then, so you said you were using is it the Kikoman Kashi?
Dashi?
No, but did you have, I thought I read in your recipe,
Kaeshi.
keishi.
Uh-huh.
So can you talk more about just, that seems to be a pretty versatile ingredient that you can use across dishes. Are there, what other ways would you use that?
I use yakitori or teriyaki chicken. So soy sauce get oxidized after soy sauce is opened, right? This one is actually great for aging. After like soy sauce is boiled with mirin, sugar, brown sugar, you can keep it room temperature and taste doesn't change. So it's amazing things to keep in your pantry.
So that's great. And we have a couple of audience questions. So Isaac asks if you find more of your guests come for your signature dishes or to be surprised with your newer dishes.
I would say half and half.
And you've got, I was watching, I will say, if Chef Soma's restaurant is new to you, there's a couple of videos. I think Eater did a really nice video of you, your process with the soba noodles, because you're making those every single day?
Yes.
By hand.
Uh-huh.
And this ties back, can you talk a little bit about that tradition and what made you want to go back to Japan and learn that?
So I was growing up eating soba noodle made by my grandma. So initially I went back to Japan to learn just for me so I can eat it. Because I never had dry soba noodle in my life, like before I came to US. Then it's totally different things, like dry noodle and fresh made soba noodle. So I just did it for myself so I can eat anytime I want. Then I'm like, oh, this is a good idea. I should sell this. Then I opened Kamonegi.
And then when you came to the US, you worked in French and Spanish restaurants, correct?
Yes.
And so what kind of influences from that experience are you bringing into what you're doing now?
I think
if any.
Okay. It's like different way of cooking, right? Like each culture has different idea. I was growing in Japan, countryside, so I never like imagined cooking food without miso or like soy sauce or mirin. So it was like eye-opening like things like not using soy sauce.
And then do you still have the dish? I thought I read about something that was a foie gras tofu. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Foie gras tofu is like basically foie gras mousse, right? Shape of tofu. You enjoy with similar to this dish, like enjoy with like wasabi, sake poached shrimp, has essence of French, but taste of like Japanese.
Oh, that's wonderful. And so we have Kelly is asking along those lines if you can share some of your creativity that you are introducing to a traditional Japanese menu, and maybe talking about that process of cooking. Like, how are you finding time, inspiration to try 50 new dishes a month and talk a little bit about how what your menu is composed of, how it changes.
So when I creating menu, everyone like brainstorm, right? So it's not just brainstorm in your brain. I just try to make the dish like in short amount of time. If I do 50 different recipe of like same concept, like one time I did a hot sandwich maker challenge, like using hot sandwich maker about 50 different recipe, just challenge to myself in short amount of time. So if I do 50, usually 10 recipes like keeper. It's like, whoa, amazing. Then like 3 recipes like super amazing. So it's just like not just doing in brain, just do it, makes like things better. And I discover more things.
That's great. So Lee asked, Chef, love your food and playful approach to cuisine, but I have to ask, where can we get that shirt you're wearing?
My shirts?
Yeah,
It's out of stock right now, but I'll make more.
that's great. And then Matthew is asking, how many attempts did it take to get those perfect proportions on your broths, and how do they differ from how you were originally taught?
Like broth?
Yeah.
I think just by taste, right? It's like super simple. Because like this is simple. Yeah.
Experiment and adjust.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Question for you, Soma-san.
Hi.
When you do the different cuisines or different ingredients, there's a fusion that happens, a natural fusion. I've done fusion in the past. Almost everything now is fusion. So how or what is the point where you feel like putting together your fusing ingredients, Japanese ingredients, using them in different styles or techniques? How do you approach that when you're experimenting?
I think if base is good, you can add on, jazz up, like if you like, you can put ketchup in here, right?
No.
You can. There's a such a thing, ketchup dashi.
Ketchup and dashi?
Yeah.
I'll take your word.
A little bit, like tablespoon of ketchup in miso soup. No one noticed.
Really?
It's like amazing dashi.
Oh.
Tomato is high in umami, so I feel like if base is good, you can add on and just try it.
Yeah. You know, so many things are fusion now that there was a time when it was carried away and it was all a big confusing kind of a mesh. And I've always been tried to stay very sensitive to that and show respect for the original ingredients that are what you're using. And same thing here, you can tell that it's some really traditional kind of flavors and things, but combined in a real creative way. So there's a balancing and tipping point there that makes sense and doesn't make sense. Yeah. Very nice.
Thank you.
So before we thank Chef Soma, Simon had asked, will the recipe for the maitake and smoked oyster sauce be published? And I can answer that one and say that yes, we will have about a week after the conference, we'll send an email with a link to all the recipes. So everything, whether it's a flavor discovery with our sponsors or breakfast, any recipes that we have here, including Chef Soma's and Chef Kawachi's, will be available. So you'll be able to try those. So one last question we have from Terry, who's asking Chef Soma, where do you get your inspiration from?
So like,
And we're gonna put you on the spot.
so just like brainstorming, but not in brain, just like do it. Just do so many times. Then if you do 50, 3, you get like amazing things.
And do you take inspiration from areas outside of food, like music, art, any of that? Or are you really just looking for inspirations, within the food and the ingredients that you're working with?
It's just food, but I limit myself. Like one time I did a top ramen challenge, just using one ingredient and creating 50 things. So it's both like limitation.
I mean, there are a lot of creative people who find inspiration in constraints like that, right? Like setting, like that there's a lot of creativity and repetition, and I think that really comes through in what you're talking about with your menus. So, all right, well, let's thank Chef Soma. We're gonna be able to try her dish at the marketplace. And we're so glad that you're here with us for this session. And now, Chef Kawachi, take it away.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming, everyone. Appreciate you joining us. It's nice to be on this end of the World of Flavors Conference throughout all my years that I was teaching up at the Greystone campus, being involved in the background scenes and seeing all the excitement and everything. It's nice to be invited in. So thank you to the Worlds of Flavor and CIA, Culinary Institute of America. I try to keep a good relationship with the Institute and maintain some kind of a cooperation there going on, so I'm happy to be here for this. As far as the theme of this and where I kind of came from, the authenticity as I was kind of alluding to here, some of the traditional flavors or the ingredients that you can use, or sauces and things like that, are things that I use as inspiration. Growing up having a Japanese grandmother who lived very close by, also on my mother's side, Chinese. So I have a little mixture of both. So on my Chinese side, uncles and aunts would cook like crazy in the house, and every time I went into their house or went over for a holiday meal or something like that, there were all these different exotic kind of smells and aromas and different flavors and things. And of course, comfort food from my Japanese grandmother that I could just walk down the street and go and eat all the time. So that has really kind of put the bug in me to become a professional chef and to start to use some of those ingredients and, as I was saying earlier, kind of fuse them in together, use them as inspiration. And so I do that in limited amounts now. I am currently at Joseph Phelps Winery up in St. Helena, and we are offering really creative wine and food pairings. I will say that depending on the wine and the food, there's this delicate balance between what kind of ingredients you can use, but I'm really trying to showcase the wines with using food. They show that kind of marriage that they have together. A lot of Asian ingredients sometimes will clash with certain wines that we make. And so it's very important to pick out the right one or kind of accent the dish in the right way. Today, the dish that I have, in fact, our sparkling wine that is made over in the Sonoma Coast in Freestone is called Ovation. And it's 2017. It's our sparkling wine that's made with some Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. And I think that dish in particular, from my perspective of not being a restaurant anymore, but being in a winery, this dish that I'm going to make will go really well with the bubbles and the effervescence that we have. In fact, if you're lucky, we're gonna pour little splashes out at the marketplace later, so you can taste a sample of what I'm making today and also have a little splashes of some bubbles from us. As far as my inspiration on everything, I'm cooking from a standpoint of comfort food, soul food, if you will, things that my grandmother made. When I came up with this dish, there's essentially like 3 different components going on here. Number one, I started with, by the way, I have Kikkoman running through my veins. I mean, I was a Kikkoman kid. It's all throughout on my family's dinner table and my grandmother's table as well. She used that as well. But a lot of the ingredients, thank you, we put together as far as using the ponzu. So in my recipe, it is a savory type of a panacotta. Right, so here's a little fusion there with the panacotta. It is going to be infused with some kombu, which, as you saw earlier, it's the same kind of idea. This is the seaweed sheet. We would brush all this off. What I'm using here in this case is some heavy cream and some milk. And then I'm going to steep this into the cream, the dairy. It'll soften up, it'll impart its umami and all that wonderful flavor in there. The other ingredients that go into this is just showing you how we put it all together. I happen to have some liquid shio koji, which I'm going to pour in there. That adds an incredible amount of umami. To make this a little more fragrant and bright, I'm putting in some lemon zest. And then I also have pectin, and this is called X58 pectin. And this particular pectin happens to work really well with dairy product. And so we would turn this on, stir it. It will basically allow it to thicken really nicely into a creamy texture. Certain pectins will not do that. So this particular one sets pretty rapidly. I will bring this up to temperature about 158 degrees or 185 degrees and not boil it. So that way it doesn't take away some of that creamy thickening power that the pectin has. Once we've done that, all the flavors will infuse into this and you will be able to allow it to sit and kind of steep for maybe about 15, 20 minutes or so. After that, you have a finished product, which I have right here to show you. And you can pour these up ahead of time into whatever mold or bowl that you have and allow them to chill, so refrigerate them. So this is something you would start up in advance. So it comes from here all the way to this finished one right here. And as you can see, we have our kombu sheet that has given off a good amount of flavor there. And here's another nice element of that. This kombu that I initially used was steeped in some of the Kikkoman ponzu sauce. So I love to use ponzu because of the idea that it has umami in there. It's got some acidity. I love the balance of the citrus with the soy sauce. So I actually used this piece into steeping into the kombu, or into the panacotta base. So you've got some wonderful flavor that's infusing into it. As this warms up and thickens, then you can actually pour it into your bowl. So that's one element. If I were to strain this out, and then you can, I meant to do that. Yeah, once you have that strained out. And you could fill small little custard cups. This is a kind of a dish that I would serve maybe as a greeting, a amuse-bouche, especially if it's going with our sparkling wine. It's a great way to start off. So this will set up pretty quickly. Pour in as much or as little as you like. Put that into the refrigerator to chill, and it'll set up really nicely. Now, ahead of time, I mentioned that there was the ponzu sauce that I warmed up and steeped the kombu into. What I also did was a very common ingredient, the katsuobushi. So I used some katsuobushi as well, and I put that into the ponzu as it was warm. So gently warm up the ponzu sauce, add in the kombu sheet, and then pull it off to the heat, and again, allow it to steep for quite some time. But I did put in some of the katsuobushi, the shaved bonito flake, in there, so that it flavors the ponzu sauce itself. Now, the nice part about that is you can make this up ahead of time. If you do this maybe 5 days in advance and you allow it just to all steep under refrigeration, afterwards, what you can do is strain that out, reserve that sheet of kombu for your panacotta, and then instead of just throwing away the katsuobushi, I took them out, drained them from the ponzu sauce, and then I dehydrated them. So you can see a side by side. After it's picked up a lot of the ponzu flavor, now it's almost crunchy. You mentioned the flavor of almost like bacon because of the smokiness and the dried and that incredible umami in there. With ponzu coated over it, it's a really nice kind of a crispy finish to it. So rather than throwing it away, I love to be useful and take advantage of the extra product that's in there. So it's given off its flavor into the ponzu, but it has also created a great flavor for a wonderful garnish. And I'm going to use this for a garnish as well. So a couple of those elements there that can be done ahead of time in advance. The ponzu would be 5 days out to allow it to steep. Everything else here, as far as a garnish, would be kimpire gobo. And so this is gobo root, burdock. Very popular in Japanese cuisine. It has some incredible fiber and nutrients. You can see they grow really long. They do grow down into the ground, so you can imagine the soil and everything, the nutrients. Very fibrous. They've got a fantastic kind of a nutty, slightly sweet kind of a character to it. I love the fact that it has a wonderful kind of a texture. And so what you would do typically, and my grandmother used to make this dish, that's why it brought back the memory for me. I'm going to use that traditional dish of kimpire gobo by taking the burdock root along with carrots, and I'm going to do like a little stir fry / braise on it. So I'm going to use some of the Kikkoman product here to flavor it. But this is a kind of a common dish that you might find in a lot of households in Japan. Grandmothers or mothers make it. Do you make it? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So many different variations on it. Some might add some red chili flake to it. Some might put sesame seeds in with it. Some will, mostly traditionally, you would probably find that it would be shredded into really fine, delicate shreds because it does have the fiber in there. So what we would do, and classically, it's done by scraping on the backside of your blade. You can see that it's white, but you'll need some acidulated water, and you would probably need to soak it and change that water a couple times. So this is a traditional way of doing it. Most of the flavor and nutrients are closer to the skin. And if you don't want to do it that way, you could definitely do it with a peeler. Just do it very lightly. You don't want to be very heavy with it. Either way works. And so once you have those, you can go ahead and cut them or shave them. If you have a mandolin, you can put them onto a mandolin. They even make peelers like these that have teeth into them about 1/8 of an inch that you can just shred and do pieces like that. How do you do yours? Soma-san. like this.
Yeah, that's sasagaki,
You
right?
cut it like
Sasagaki
that?
technique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can also shave them with a knife very, very quickly like that. For myself, what I decided to do today was do them into ribbons. And so the ribbons that I have been already soaked, as well as carrot. And I just decided to do ribbons just for presentation's sake. I find it a little more appealing. Appealing. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Carrots are appealing too. So now you have a little color and crunch. So what I will do from here, I've soaked them, rinsed them a couple times. There was a little bit of acidulated water in there because they do change. You can see how the color is changing right away. They have a lot of polyphenols in there, so that's going to make it turn color and oxidize. So you can see by soaking it and then draining it well. Now I can go into a little pan here and do the cooking part of it all. And I just thought that this would be a great garnish to go on top of the panacotta, since you've got some texture in there, you've got a little different flavor, but it's still utilizing and staying with kind of some of the Japanese flavors that I'm so fond of. So into the pan here, not over extremely high heat, maybe over medium. Because they are thin shavings, and they won't take as long to cook as maybe the shredded thicker pieces, it should cook up fairly quickly. All right, so I have some sesame oil, as well as some soybean oil in the pan. And all I want to do is really kind of heat it up. I'm not looking to get a lot of dark color onto this, but I'll start off with the gobo. This might be something that you make up ahead of time, and it can, you can save it. It doesn't have to be consumed right away and eaten hot. You might find that it's almost like a side little salad, a condiment that's served on the plate. What's the name of the side dishes, all the pickles and things like that? Sunomono and all that?
Like kobachi.
Yeah, all the different little side dishes that go along with your meal. Yeah, so typically all these savory little bites and crunchy textures and things add more interest to the meal. So sauteing off a little bit.
You don't use chopstick?
Hashis. So a quick little cook on them. They'll get a little depth of flavor. They get a little bit nutty. If they pick up a slight amount of color in there, that's okay with me. And typically it's more of the gobo than it is the carrot. So it might be about 2/3, 1/3. You can see it starting to soften down just a little bit here. And again, I'm going a little bit higher heat because it is shaved fairly thin. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and add in some carrot. Let that soften just a bit. Best ingredients to add on to this. I do have some mirin, the kotere mirin. I have some sake, and then I also have some shoyu. So between those three, it's going to glaze, add some flavor. There'll be a little bit of sweetness from the rice wine. You'll have the seasoning and the salt that comes from the shoyu. This looks pretty good. I do like a little bit of the crunch left in there. You can cook it longer if you want to. But in true kimpura form, you want to start off by kind of sauteing a bit, and then you can add your ingredients and your liquid in there. So what I'm going to do is add in the alcohol first. There's the mirin. Sake, burn off the alcohol.
Oh, thank you.
Kanpai.
Kanpai.
And then, shoyu. Now, if you use a darker shoyu, it's definitely going to color and change the color of the kimpura gobo, the gobo itself. And so from here, go by the taste, go by the texture. When you see it start to wilt down, that's probably far enough along. Give it a little taste. If you want a little more salt in there, seasoning in there, you could add a little more soy. Sesame seeds if you want to garnish with. And so then you have your perfect little side, your condiment, your garnish. I have a finished batch here that you can see that it did up ahead of time. Now, if we remember, we've already set our panacotta. Very flavorful, rich and creamy. It's got a wonderful texture. You have a little lemon zest in there. You have the umami that's already built up on that. You know, umami is kind of a common thread here between all the ingredients that we keep talking about. If I were to use one of our beautiful red wines like our Joseph Phelps Insignia or our Bacchus Cabernet, they would kind of clash with too much umami. And that's one of the things about Asian cuisine and Asian ingredients that you have to be very mindful of. So the fact that I'm using the bubbles and the sparkling, that effervescence and that high acid that's in the sparkling wine, is going to be a really nice kind of a contrast, and it'll help to cut through some of this extra richness. And there shouldn't be any clash with the umami ingredients that are adding on here. Chefs are kind of, we get a little excited about umami. Anytime that you can add more umami, more savoriness, more of that deliciousness that makes you want to go back and have another bite, we tend to pile on quite a bit of those ingredients. So, all right, so we have our panna cotta all set. Here's some of the ribbons of the, and this one is chilled. So besides the one that I just made, you can do like a little ribbon garnish. Like so. Nice crunching texture on there. So the other fun ingredient was our katsubushi that was soaked in ponzu. Here's little bits and flavor bursts. And it's nice and flaky. A little bit goes a long way. Why not put some beautiful trout roe? This happens to be from a local supplier, Tsar Nikolai. This is trout roe, almost in the same form as ikura, salmon roe. How much? More?
More.
Motto. Motto. Good amount like that. Right? So colorful, a lot of great textures in here, bursts and pops of flavor. Happen to have a little nasturtium, little peppery flower that adds some beauty to it. Micro shiso. This is micro red shiso. So a little pepperiness in there as well. So as you eat, you've got different layering of flavor. You've got texture and crunch in there. To me, this is like soul food in a semi-elevated form, something that I would serve at the winery to show off the wines, something that speaks to my heritage and some of the comfort foods that I enjoy, and using great ingredients that already help to add umami into the dish itself. I'll be doing a version of this at the marketplace so you can taste and see how it all comes together.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So we have some questions.
Please.
And I'm seeing some ingredient questions. What is the difference between soyu and soy sauce?
So shoyu and soy, same thing.
shoyu.
Yeah, shoyu, Japanese for soy sauce.
Okay.
So if I slip into that, it's just because, yeah.
Okay.
Shoyu.
And then Kelly was saying she loves the idea of dehydrating the bonita flakes. Do either of you do anything with the leftover kombu?
Kombu after so.
Sometimes I puree, make like a kombu jam.
That sounds really good. Mm-hmm. I've taken kombu from soaking in the ponzu sauce made from scratch and taken that and sliced it, julienne, garnish from there. I've never really deep fried it. I don't know. That might be something fun to try, get crispy along with all of that. But yeah, that's a great thing to use, you know, a lot of flavor in there.
And then we do have a question about that special pectin. Where can home cooks find it?
You should be able to find it if you get online and search for X58 pectin. It is dairy friendly, so it will set nice and creamy with the, as opposed to using gelatin like a lot of classic panacottas have. They use a traditional gelatin. You have a little bit more of a variance on is it going to set or not? Is it thick enough? Is it creamy enough? If you go by the right amount for the amount of liquid or the amount of cream that's in there, the X58 works really well with that. But you should be able to find that online. You can search it and find it.
And then I know that Chef Kawachi, you talked about pairing food with wine, but Chef Soma, I'm wondering, so I neglected to mention that you also, besides Komonegi, you have, is it a sake bar that is Hanyoto?
Hanyato.
Hanyato. So can you talk to us a little bit about the principles of pairing sake with food?
Sake pairing is way easier than wine because wine has like naturally iron, right? So like red wine and shrimp is like example, get like irony flavor. But sake doesn't have any iron, so it's pretty much versatile for anything. Like it's more like hard to find bad pairing. So please drink sake all the time.
And do you have a favorite? Is there, you know, as you would look at, say, wine or beer and pairing, and you have, say, well, I have a beer background, so that's what I know. I know very little about wine, so I'm always, as I'm sure a lot of people are, pleased to learn about, you know, how to pair food with that. But in terms of beer, like a saison is, if you're cooking dinner, you're trying to create a pairing. Saison beer is that can be a go-to for a variety of things. And so you're saying, is it across sake, like you can really, is there like a go-to that you go, like if someone wants to start introducing that into their menus, or even at home when they're cooking dinner, is there a type or you know, a sake that you go to first?
Usually, elegant type of sake goes first, like Junmai Daiginjo or Junmai Ginjo. But also sake, you can enjoy with different temperature. Even like same bottle of sake, you chill it first, like drink ice cold, then let it bring room temperature, and then change the character of sake, which good with like hot dish. So you start with cold sake, appetizer, then room temperature with like middle dish. Then you can also heat up sake, and that's amazing too. So I think like changing temperature, even like one sake, it's fun pairing for like entire course.
That sounds great. Sounds like it's also a lot of fun. And then Chef Kawachi, we have a question about what were some of the big failures in trying to adapt traditional recipes to pair with your specific wines?
With specific wines?
And just I think in general, when you're, you know, when you, because you have both, you're at Joseph Phelps now, but you were at St. Savory before, and you're learning a new portfolio, you know, like what is that R&D like?
A lot of drinking. A lot of tasting back and forth. We have the luxury of being able to assemble a dish or create a sauce and then go back and forth with the wine. So there's always this cause and effect that happens. You take a sip of the wine that you're intending to pair with, you try either the whole dish, a bite of the dish, or the sauce component that would go with it, and then you go back to that exact same wine. So even though the wine hasn't changed at all, your food is the one thing. That's the tool that we have that we can adjust or pick or choose or change or not use at all. And what happens is it creates this effect on the wine or your perception of the wine. So that's the different and kind of fun part about it, is if I were to use, you were talking about maybe experimenting with different ingredients. If I were to use something that was too sweet, that had too much chili spice or heat, and we want to pour that and pair that with our beautiful Insignia, our flagship wine, which is our 5 Bordeaux blend, famous red wine, I would find that it would clash the heat and the excess sweet actually changes your perception of the wine, and it makes it taste harsh, it makes it taste bitter, and that's not what the wine is. And it's only because I am properly paired or tried something with that wine. So it takes a little experimentation. Yes, it does take some drinking, and I'm okay with that. But it's more or less following some simple rules and guidelines where things are not too spicy, too sweet, there's not too much umami. Several of the ingredients that I've tried in the past were just built up way too much umami, and tasting any Cabernet wine or our insignia, it tended to make it taste like metallic, which is not what we want, right? We want that wine to taste as good as it was, even better when it's properly paired. So those are some of the kind of fun challenges. Trial and error, experimentation, like a lot of the experimentation you do as well. That's really our guideline. You know, we can come up with the greatest ideas and maybe it's a little too far-fetched or the ingredients are too strong or overpowering. So then we have to taper back just a bit. I will say that for the majority of the dishes that I do at the winery, I've held it back on a couple of ingredients. It's not quite as busy. It doesn't have so many touches on it. It's a little more straightforward and everything so that the wine can really shine through. So from my perspective as a winery chef, that's my approach.
That sounds great. So let's thank Chef Mutsuko Soma and Chef Tod Kawachi for a great demo. And a great conversation. Thank you, chefs. And we also want to thank Kikkoman Sales USA for bringing Chef Soma and bringing this session together and sponsoring it. So we thank them.